Hi there, basically Bob here, and if you're fairly new to Pokemon, that's perfect. I made this video just for people like you. Now, I chose to do this video because I've seen a ton of Pokemon for Beginners videos, extensive and broad ones, that cover quite a bit of topics, but I think what people kind of assume is that you guys know as much as we know when we kind of first started, and that's not really fair to say because there's people like me who've been playing since Gen 1, and when Pokemon first started, we would really get into the storylines, talk to every NPC, every trainer, because we were kids. The storyline seemed engaging to us, but the storylines aren't really that engaging in Pokemon games. So you might not pick up on things because you might not talk to everybody. It's really tempting to skip trainers or skip people, and so that's okay. The only thing that I really recommend you've done if you haven't done is make sure you've played and beaten a Pokemon game before watching this video. Okay, so there's going to be two things that I am leaving out in this video. That's EV training and IV training. Okay, now what those are, if you don't know, EV stands for effort value, not like the Pokemon, but like effort value. IV stands for individual value. Now those are very, very broad topics, and I can't really cover those in a video where I'm already covering so many other things. So you do need to know those things, okay? Not necessarily for battling when you first start, but for making Pokemon for battling. Now, this video is going to be covering a foundation for battling and kind of the mechanics and how to properly use those mechanics for link battling and competitive play. Now, for making Pokemon, it's a learning process. It's a very long learning process. You have to really study it. You have to just practice it, do it. It takes a long time to kind of perfect breeding Pokemon, putting stats into Pokemon correctly. So I'm not going to cover that in these videos. I will be making a video in about a week or two on those topics. But for now, once you get your foundation down, I highly recommend going and looking up EV training and IV training and figuring out how to do those things. But this, like I said, is going to be a foundation for basically battling, what you guys need to understand the mechanics of Pokemon and the mechanics of just battling in general so you can get started and feel more comfortable right away. Alright, so we're going to jump into it. Okay, so this Pokemon 101, the ins and outs of getting started. Now, these are a list of resources for you guys. I'm going to go over them briefly, and there's going to be a couple that I will go over more extensively later on in the video. But they all kind of do different things that you're going to need, and you're going to use all of these, I can promise you, throughout your Pokemon career, especially early on. Some of them you'll use no matter what, even when you're an advanced player, you'll revert back to some of these to consistently use. Okay, so the first one is Pokemon Showdown. Now I'm going to go over that more extensively later on. It's a Pokemon emulator. You're going to need it. I'm going to tell you why later. You're absolutely going to need it. It's super, super important. Okay, Bulbapedia is the next one. Basically, if there's something you want to know about a Pokemon, you can type it in on Bulbapedia. It will tell you everything. It's going to tell you the lore of the Pokemon from the generation that it came out to the most current generation. It is going to tell you things in the anime, when it was referenced in the anime, when it came up in the anime. It's going to tell you everything about that Pokemon, what it evolves from, what it evolves into. It's going to show you like its shiny sprite, all of its stats. It's going to show you absolutely everything. Alright, so Serebii.net. Serebii.net will do something similar to Bulbapedia. It'll kind of give you a encyclopedia for Pokemon. And it won't be necessarily as extensive as Bulbapedia's. Bulbapedia covers a lot on one Pokemon specifically, but what Serebii.net does have is up-to-date news on Pokemon in general, not just the video game. I know that's what we're talking about now, but I'm just letting you know Serebii.net has news on Pokemon in general. It also has a calculator for stats. I don't use Serebii.net's calculator, but it is highly regarded and it's a really good calculator. So Serebii.net has some pretty good utilities you guys can use. I recommend checking that one out. It's pretty cool. Nugget Bridge is primarily for VGC. And what VGC is the Video Game Championship Series. Now, if you watch Pokemon videos online, you see like in the titles it'll say OO, OU. Now what that is, OO, UU, NU, those are tiers, okay? Pokemon has tiers. And the tiers are broke down by this community, this fan-based community called Smogon, alright? It's mainly singles battling. Get out of here. It's my little doggy. Okay, it's mainly singles battling for Smogon, and they break it down into tiers, so that way every Pokemon is kind of viable. If you like a Pokemon, you can use that Pokemon in its tier. You don't have to bring a Pikachu in against a Lugia, okay, because Lugia won't be allowed in that tier, alright, because, Pokemon that Pikachu can match up with will be allowed in that tier, but Nugget Bridge, okay, doesn't really do Smogon, it does VGC, and that is the official Pokemon tournament format. It's a doubles format, alright. And I'll be kind of talking more about VGC later on in the video. I'll give you guys a nice little link in the description to a really good video for VGC battling. But you could basically type in a Pokemon, And if the Pokemon has been successfully used in a tournament, a VGC tournament, it'll bring up that Pokemon, like a different list of archives and kind of forums you can look over of a team that Pokemon was used on. It'll show you the stats they used for it, the nature, the moves they used, the team that was around it. It'll explain to you how they used it. So Nugget Bridge is awesome for VGC. Next, we're going to be going over the Team Magma Team Builder. Now, what that is, this is an awesome resource. I absolutely love this one. You could put in 6 Pokemon, assuming you have 6 Pokemon. I mean, you could put in 2 or 3 also. That's usually how people start, is they put in 2 or 3 Pokemon into this. So you can see those Pokemon's weaknesses, resistances, and also you put in their moves, and it'll show you the coverage you have against other Pokemon, like what super effective damage you have, what neutral damage you have, what you have that's not very effective against Pokemon. So then you can kind of start to put things in place behind those 2 or 3 Pokemon to fill in those gaps. So the Team Magma Team Builder is absolutely awesome. In the VGC 2015 speed tiers, it's going to basically break down the different speeds for common Pokemon in VGC. So say that you have something to counter a specific Pokemon, and you need to go first. You need to go before that Pokemon. You're going to look up the primary amount of speed that people invest in that Pokemon, the most common speed that Pokemon has, and you can go ahead and invest like 20 stats into your Pokemon just to make sure you outspeed that Pokemon. So you can go first and get that one-hit KO. Okay, Pokemon Showdown damage calculator. I'll go over that a lot more when we cover Pokemon Showdown. But it is really important. It's very essential to building teams, especially in VGC, because VGC, when you get into EV training and IB training, it's very weird spreads you use for VGC, okay? I'll go over that more in my EV training video, and I'll talk about it more as I talk about Pokemon Showdown. The Pokemon Global Link Statistics is absolutely awesome, too. You can basically go online, okay? You can type in a Pokemon, and it's going to bring up the Pokemon, the item people use, the nature people use, the 4 moves that people use on it most commonly, the ability they most commonly use, and it'll show you it all by percentages. So you'll be able to see, like if an item's used 90% of the time and everything else is like 5 or 0.3, well, there's a reason for that probably, and you're going to want to try that Pokemon out, the most common way it's used, just to see if you like it, because it's being used like that a lot for a very good reason, because it's the best way to use it. Okay. Memorizing your type chart. Now, if you've played Pokemon, which I'm assuming you have, you probably know all the common things like fire beats grass, grass beats water, water beats fire. Now, I still see even advanced players forgetting some of their typing sometimes, and I might here and there too, like that poison doesn't affect steel. Steel is not very effective to water. Dragon is super effective to dragon. Okay, some of the more uncommon type advantages and disadvantages like that, you want to make sure you have them all memorized. And what I can recommend you do, not just when you first start playing, but if you're playing online and you're playing on the DS, you have access to a computer, always have a type chart open. Now, that's not cheating, okay, because it's going to really help you consistently memorize things that don't come up as commonly in the game, all right? Because you might not see a fairy-type Pokemon every single match you play, but you still want to make sure you know the type disadvantages and advantages for a fairy-type Pokemon. Okay, you might not see a poison Pokemon every game, but you still want to know all the advantages and disadvantages. So have a type chart up, memorize it, so that way when you go to an event and they don't allow you to just have a type chart out in front of you, you have an advantage because you have those types memorized. So no matter what you see, you'll be absolutely ready. Okay, so we're going to be going on to the difference between a physical and special. Now I have an Alakazam here because he's a great example. So Pokemon has 2 different types of attacks and defense: physical attack, special attack, physical defense, and special defense. In the bottom left-hand corner, as you can see, there's a physical attack symbol to the left and a special attacking symbol to the right. Alright, so basically, when you're going to put moves on a Pokemon, you want to go to the summary, you want to check out that Pokemon's physical attack and special attack. And then when you go to your list of TMs, or when you have the option to put a move on a Pokemon, it's going to show you this little symbol. It's going to show you physical or special. Now, based off of your Pokemon stats, you're going to know what to put on that Pokemon. So, Alakazam has a base physical attack of 50. That's pretty low. But he has a special attack of 135. That is pretty massive. I mean, it's almost 3 times the amount of damage you're going to be outputting, okay? So he learns to attack Psychic, and he also learns to attack Psycho. God, flies. Okay, so based off of these stats, it's pretty obvious which one to put on him. So you're going to want to keep that in mind when you're playing Pokemon. And when you're building teams, you're going to want to kind of take a look at those Pokemon stats, see which ones are better. And you also will use this when you're putting walls in your team too. And a wall is kind of a Pokemon that kind of stalls or defends the rest of your team. So if you have a physical wall, you're going to want to have higher physical defense so you can deal with physical threats. If you have a special wall, you're going to want to have really high special defense so you can deal with special attacking Pokemon. Alright, so we're going to be moving on to Pokemon having specific roles. Now, I don't know if the Slowbro is the best example, but it's two kind of ways you can run a Pokemon. So Pokemon having specific roles on a team. Now, what I mean by this is if you played World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, RPGs where your characters and the characters around you, you all have different roles to kind of do different things. All right, you're not going to want a full team of healers because you're not really going to be able to put out good damage. You're not going to want a full aggro team because you're not really going to be able to support yourself very well. So if someone counters the aggro, the aggro whatever you're giving out, you're just stuck with aggro characters. So you can't really do anything. So there's tons of different types of specific roles Pokemon have. Some of them are a special wall, physical wall, a sweeper, which is basically where you try and set up, raise your stats higher so you can just plow through the team. A disruption Pokemon, which is something kind of like the Slowbro to the left, who's a physical wall, and kind of a disruption Pokemon where you try and stop your opponent's main goal. You kind of try and deal with that one threat your opponent has. We have a support Pokemon, which would be something like a healer Pokemon, like in doubles. You could have Pokemon that will cure status of the Pokemon next to you or give health back to the Pokemon next to you. And then we have a lead, which is something that 90% of the time you're going to be coming out first with because it can set up entry hazards. It can disrupt the flow of the game, kind of switch out and let the rest of your team do work. So as you can see, you have the Slowbro physical wall on the left. This Slowbro, I would probably put more into defense physically because that's what I'd be using it for. You have Scald, Thunder Wave, Slack Off, and Ice Beam. We have Slack Off for healing. We have Thunder Wave to kind of cripple those threats. We have Scald because he's a physical wall, so Scald has a percentage chance to burn. So that makes your physical defense even higher. Alright, now we have the Calm Mind Sweep Slowbro. Let's say you had a team that had Trick Room. And what Trick Room does is it allows all your slower Pokemon to go first. Well, Slowbro is a very slow Pokemon, so you would put him on your team as the sweeper, the special attacking sweeper. Calm Mind raises your special attack and special defense by one stage. So say you had Trick Room set up, and I believe Slowbro does learn Trick Room. So maybe you could take off like Slack Off for Trick Room or something. You could set up Calm Minds on a special attacking Pokemon. And since you have Trick Room up, you're going to be going first, so you can proceed to have a boost in your special attack and just completely sweep through their team, hence the name Sweeper, because your special attack is higher than anything they can realistically deal with. So just keep that in mind, Pokemon having specific roles on the team. Okay, Stab. Now, I'm assuming a lot of people already know what this is, but just in case you don't, it stands for Same Type Attack Bonus. Now, what this means is if you have Raichu, an electric type Pokemon, use the move Thunderbolt. It's an electric type move. Has a base power of 90. Well, Stab increases your base power by 50%. So the base power now increases to 135. That's a lot more base power. And if you take into account knowing all of your types correctly, you can either multiply that by 2 or by 4 if you're hitting a water and flying type Pokemon, because electric's super effective to both of those things. So you could take a 90 base power move, put it on the right type of Pokemon, and use it at the right time and turn a decent amount of damage into an easy one-hit KO, just by knowing what Stab is. Alrighty, items. Now, I know when you play throughout the storyline, full restores, max revives are awesome items. You can even use them mid-battle, and that's really cool. That's great. If you've never played a link battle or a competitive battle, you can't go into your bag and use items. So what you're going to want to be looking into is held items that either activate at a specific time or give you a consistent, constant boost during battle. So you don't have to go into your bag to use them. Now, items that are strong on some Pokemon may not be viable on others. Now I have little cute Snorlax in the right-hand corner. And Snorlax, a very common item on him is Leftovers. It's pretty much what you run 90% of the time. It heals you by 1/16 every turn. Now we had Alakazam earlier in the video, right? Well, Alakazam's base defenses are pretty poor, and his base health is pretty poor too. And in Pokemon, that's going to usually result in a one-hit KO. So you would not want to put Leftovers on Alakazam. You want to put something to either support his special attack, his speed, or his frailty. They have an item called a Focus Sash, which is really common, and it allows you to guaranteed take one hit as long as you're at full health. So you want to make sure that the item is optimizing your Pokemon based off of its stats, okay? And if you're wondering what item to put on a certain Pokemon, you can look it up on the global statistics, Pokemon Global Link statistics. As I stated earlier in the video, it will show you the highest percentage of items used, and that's the one you're going to want to practice with because, like I said, people are using it for a reason because it's the better thing to do. Okay, storyline moves not to use. Now, all of these moves are really good in the storyline. Say you're playing Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you catch a Pidgey and use them throughout the storyline, and you need a Pokemon to learn Fly so you can kind of navigate around. So you teach your Pidgey how to fly. Well, in the storyline, it's a pretty good move because it has good base power, has 100% accuracy. It's an awesome move. Well, the thing about Pokemon and competitive battling and then Link battling in general is it's basically like 90% of Pokemon is prediction by your opponent. That's how you basically almost always play Pokemon, is based off of prediction. Your move is based off of what you think your opponent is going to do. They're not going to play like the NPC, okay? Your opponent is not Bugcatcher Wade. They will switch out if they see Fly coming into a Rock-type Pokemon, which will hence force you to switch out. So now they have the advantage to hit you with a move based off of what they think you're switching into. So you don't want to use these moves because they take a turn to set up. Although they do have good base power, good accuracy, your opponent knows what's coming because it is what you're locked into. It's what you have to do. Okay, so it's going to basically force you to switch out on the next turn because they have a Pokemon that can probably wall you, and they're going to be able to hit you for whatever they want to hit you with. I mean, if you can't do any realistic damage with their Pokemon, they're probably going to know what you're going to have to switch out into. So they're either going to switch to gain advantage, type advantage, or they're just going to hit you for something super effective based off of what you're switching into. So that's why these moves are not really good, because your opponent knows what you're doing because you're locked into it. You can't do anything else besides finish off this move that you selected. So don't use these moves in competitive or Link battling. In the storyline, like I said, they're great accuracy, great base power, blah, blah, blah. But there's just some moves that are good in the storyline that aren't good at competitive battling. Now, there are some HMs like Surf and Waterfall, which are totally viable because they don't take a turn to set up, they have good base power and good accuracy, and people do use those in competitive battling a lot. So just these three, keep in mind. I know they're tempting, don't use them. Okay, status inflictions. Now, there's a lot to know about status inflictions. There's non-volatile status, which is burn, freeze, paralysis, poisoned, badly poisoned, and sleep. All right, now, volatile, it's a long list. I didn't realize how many there were. There's a lot. There's confusion, attract, curse, there's tons. So refer to Bulbapedia for that list, okay? You don't commonly see all of them. The most common one you see is confusion. So that's why I'm not going to go over all of them. But non-volatile, basically, what a burn does is, I believe you lose 1/16 of your health every turn. And also, some players might not know coming in the newer generations, burn, if a Pokemon is burned, it loses half of its physical attack stat. So that's why Will-O-Wisp is such a common move in battling, because if you burn a physical threat, it hinders that threat massively, all right? Now, freeze is, I mean, in my opinion, it's the best status condition there is. It's super overpowered, and that's why there's not a single move in Pokemon that gives you 100% chance to freeze. There's just not any move in Pokemon that does it. The highest is 30% with Secret Power. So you have basically a 20% chance to unfreeze every turn. Now, there are some exceptions. If you hit a Pokemon with a Fire-type move, like in doubles, or if you predict it and switch intervals in Pokemon to a Fire-type move, it will unthaw. There's also a list on Bulbapedia or wherever you want to go that will tell you moves you can actually use to unfreeze yourself. I believe Scald is one. I think maybe Incinerate's one, but there's a few that will unfreeze yourself. Okay, now, Paralysis. I believe Paralysis halves your speed. I'm not sure if it halves it or drops it by 3/4. But basically, you have a 1/4 chance to move every turn when you're paralyzed, and it halves your speed. So Paralysis is a very common thing. People use Thunder Wave. People use moves like Discharge to try and paralyze you. It's a really common thing to do to kind of cripple faster Pokemon. Now, Poisoned and Badly Poisoned. Poisoned is just like Burn. It reduces your health by a set amount every turn. But when you're badly poisoned, like with the move Toxic, which is also a very common move in singles, the percentage increases every turn, so it consistently does more and more and more and more. And I think it might stop at a certain point. Maybe like half of your health is the point where it stops. But Toxic is really common because it just has a plethora of damage over time. You're basically forced to switch or just give up that Pokemon. So it's pretty commonly used. Now, Sleep is really, really common in VGC. Not so much in singles anymore because there's a sleep cause where in singles on Smogon, your opponent can only have one Pokemon to sleep at a time. Alright, but in VGC, you see a Pokemon like a Mungus with the move Spore, and you can put all the Pokemon to sleep if you want. It has a 100% chance to hit, and it just puts the Pokemon to sleep. How sleep works is you are asleep, I believe, 2 to 5 turns. That's how sleep works. And you can't do anything while you're asleep. And you have a guaranteed 1 turn of sleep. Alright? So you might wake up on the next turn, but that first turn that you fall asleep, guaranteed turn of sleep. So if you switch out and you come back in, you're going to have another turn of sleep. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, so weather / field altering moves. There is a lot, okay? But the main ones that you want to be looking at are Sunny Day, Rain Dance, Hail, Trick Room, and not so commonly, but once in a while, Gravity. Alright, so when Sun is up, it gives certain Pokemon advantages based off of their abilities. Pokemon will have the ability Chlorophyll, which is double their speed. Pokemon will have the ability Solar Power. I forget what that one does, but there's different things that will do different things based off of the weather that's up. So Sunny Day will also increase the fire moves by 50%. Rain is also the same thing. It has some abilities like Swift Swim, which will double your speed and increases the power of water moves by 50%. Hail is not as common. It doesn't give an increase to any moves, but what Hail does do is it allows the move Blizzard to hit 100% of the time, and it also does chip damage. So it's like whoever is an Ice type loses 1/16 of their health every turn. And there's one I forgot on here. Oh my gosh, Sand. Sand is really popular. There's things called like Japanese sand teams with Pokemon Tyranitar, which kicks up a sandstorm. And what a sandstorm does is it increases Pokemon's special defense if they're ground, steel, or rock, I believe. So yeah, you're gonna want to look into Sand too. Trick Room, basically for 5 turns, the slower Pokemon goes first. All right. And Gravity increases the accuracy of everything by 50%, and flying Pokemon or Pokemon with the ability Levitate can now be hit by ground type moves. There's plenty more, but these are the most common, including Sand, obviously. There's abilities that can also cause weather too. Drought and why can't I think of it? Well, there's one that causes rain. Drought and drizzle. Drizzle, okay. Drought, drizzle, and then the one that causes hail also, and then there's one that causes sand. So you're going to want to go online, study these really well. There's a lot to know about all of them, so I can't really cover them specifically in every single thing that they all do. But go ahead and look up all these, memorize them, including Sand. Okay, it's going to help you tremendously. Alright, Pokemon Showdown. Now this is the second to last thing I'm going to be going over. Now, like I said, I cannot cover everything in this video. And I remember I told you to I said you needed to play a Pokemon game and beat a Pokemon game. Well, if you can't do that, if you don't have a cartridge, but you've been looking at Pokemon, you really like Pokemon, you want to get into Pokemon, download this emulator. That little link right there, PokemonShowdown.com, that's where you go to download this. It's a completely free emulator. If you can't download it, just click play online. It's the same thing, I believe. This has a damage calculator. It has usage stats. It's amazing. Basically what Pokemon Showdown is, has every single Pokemon in the entire game, even ones that aren't fully evolved, Little Cup Pokemon, baby Pokemon, and it breaks them all down into different tiers, okay? So the cartridge does not do that. You can't go on the cartridge and select tiers, but Pokemon Showdown, it's a Smogon fan community, all the tiers that you can practice with. You can take any 6 Pokemon, build them any way you want, and practice with other people online. It's incredible. It's the best way to practice, in my opinion. Now, for VGC, I'd probably recommend practicing on the cartridge on Battle Spot doubles, but for Smogon, this is the way to go. If you want to get into the Smogon community and all the different tiers, Pokemon Showdown is absolutely great. It's an incredible emulator. Highly, highly recommend that you get it. Alright, Smogon versus VGC. Now, Smogon, I don't know if I talked about this in the video a little bit. I think I did it a little bit, but Smogon is a fan-based community. It's primarily singles. They do have doubles. It breaks everything down into different tiers, okay? And Pokemon Showdown is going to be the way, what you want to use to practice that. VGC is the Pokemon official tournament format. So everything on the Pokemon's website that's set up for a tournament, all the regionals you're going to go to, they're all doubles formats, okay? And the ban lists are also different too. VGC usually bans the cover Pokemon, whereas Smogon usually bans Pokemon based off of testing. And there is a pretty large difference between the two. for VGC, I'm going to be trying to link a video in the description that's going to be a great video for you to learn from for VGC. It's this guy, Aaron Cybertron Zhang. He's a great player. He's highly renowned in the VGC community. I'm going to link his video on VGC team building in this guide. He goes over a lot of things. He's an excellent player, much better than me or pretty much anybody I know when it comes to VGC. So that's pretty much going to be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you maybe learned a thing or two. And if you didn't, leave a thumbs down. That's okay. Just comment and let me know why. If you did like it, please thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. And as always, you guys have an awesome day.